not merely for us to ask, but to study it out and to work and show him that we really want to know.
I don't know the history of how the Book of Mormon, the Book of Abraham, came into the hands of Joseph Smith. All I know is that we believe, and I believe, that he was called to be a prophet in the latter days, and that if the Lord wanted him to have that information and translate it and put it into Scripture for our day, then that's what he wanted him to do.
Well, I think you should always question. I don't think God expects us not to question. Yes, we should question and eventually, ultimately, question God, but also do our own research because God gave us our minds for a reason, and come to some conclusions and ask him, hey, I think this, am I right? And he does answer us. I know he does, so.
In the end, the question persists. Does all this really matter? Should a non-Mormon have the right to question the church on issues of doctrine or scholastic integrity?
What Mormonism is trying to teach us is, if it were true, it's so important that we check the truth of those claims against the historical documents that are the basis for those claims.
Central to Mormonism's religious claims is the claim that Joseph Smith was a true prophet of God. If that follows, then everything he says must be true. If that falls, then nothing that he says necessarily is true.
Now that the veracity of his claims about what those documents say is widely questioned even within the Mormon community, we have legitimate questions to raise with Mormon scholars about their new spin on what was going on with the Book of Abraham.
In the face of this mountain of evidence, how are faithful Mormons to stand? How does one reconcile the words of the prophet with the evidence of history? At least for some Mormons, these discoveries raise troublesome questions.
Yeah, my view used to be just like the regular members of the church, that this is a record of Abraham, just like it's published in the Pearl Great Prize. And when the papyri was turned over to the church in 1967, I was pretty well satisfied with this is the actual papyrus that Joseph Smith used. The publication of it confirmed that. But when they started, the Egyptologists started translating it, you get a different view.
A friend of mine mentioned to me years ago, and I think that there's a tremendous amount of truth in this, nothing will disturb an LDS member more than finding out that Brigham Young taught the Adam God theory than having some modern Mormon apostle lie about it. And so the church really doesn't do anything, any value for their members by sanitizing the facts of the Book of Abraham. I think that we are in a unique position today where we have a tremendous amount of understanding, Egyptological resources, etc., that we can go to for understanding these manuscripts.
When it comes right down to it, the real question is, are the truth claims, the claims that Mormons make about God, about human beings, and how a human being can be right with God, are those claims credible? Are they the kinds of things that we ought to bet our lives on?
Gary and Sarah Webb live in Draper, Utah with their 2 young children. Both were lifelong members of the Mormon Church. Gary was heading into his senior year at BYU when he came to a life-changing conclusion.
I even remember the spot. When I came to the conclusion that the faith of my childhood was untrue. I remember I was outside just sitting on a lawn in the summertime reading the book about the Book of Abraham, and the evidence was so overwhelming. There was no place for doubt or this is anti-Mormon or this is just something somebody fudged together. It was very clear and well documented. It really became the final straw for me, and I realized that I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life pretending to believe something that wasn't true. And I think I realized that I was going to have to make some changes that were not going to be easy.
That it was a really difficult time for us, and but we've gotten past the anger and, you know, into discovering more about the truth instead of lies that we were stuck in for a while.
While Gary and Sarah have left the Mormon Church, they have not left faith altogether.
Yeah, Sarah and I have some friends who have left the LDS Church and have basically given up any faith that they have at all and any kind of belief in God. And that's kind of sad for us, because although it's easy to understand, because once you put your faith and trust in something for so long, and then you find out that you know, that your beliefs are not verified, but rather that they're unfounded, it can make it difficult to trust again, and that's kind of like throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying, well, if the LDS Church isn't true, then you know, the Bible isn't true, and there's no Jesus Christ and no God, and all these things are not one and the same. So.
In 1835, Joseph Smith purchased scrolls from Michael H. Chandler. At the time, no one knew what those mysterious ancient Egyptian scrolls actually were. No one in America could read the text or had seen anything of the sort before. But Joseph Smith claimed that he could read them, that he could translate them.
I have commenced the translation of some of the characters or hieroglyphics, and much to our joy, have found that one of the rolls contained the writings of Abraham. One of the rolls contained the writings of Abraham.
The evidence against the authenticity of the Book of Abraham cannot help but raise questions about Joseph Smith's other translations, such as the more foundational Book of Mormon. For some, since Joseph's translation of the Book of Abraham, which can be tested, has been found to lack credibility, then how can we accept his translation of the Book of Mormon, which cannot be tested? Scholars have never had the opportunity to examine those originals. And since the gold plates were returned to the angel Moroni, apparently they never will.